This episode is brought to you by Rune. Click the link in the description box below for more information.
What kind of plants should I buy and put in my listening room as an audiophile? This question came to me from my friend Barry in Australia last week, and it's a very good question. And you've probably seen in many of my videos I have quite a few plants in my listening room, and that is for a reason. And each one has its own role to play. So in this video, I'd like to talk through the plants I've chosen and what they do to improve the sound quality of my hi-fi system. So in the corner of my listening room, I have bass traps from GIK Acoustics. But right next to them, I place this rubber fig plant because this plant also can help me better control and manage the bass in my room. Now, what's interesting about this rubber fig is that its leaves vary in thickness and also vary in size. So the smaller, sort of thinner leaves at the top, they sort of manage your sort of mid bass. And as we go down the plant, we get to the bigger, thicker leaves. And what they do is they momentarily store, like the bass comes out of the speaker, obviously, and they momentarily store the bass, a bit like a capacitor, and then re-release it in a slightly improved form. Now, in a couple of months, I'm going to be reviewing a couple of hi-fi systems that include subwoofers. And what I'm trying to do in preparation for that is get this plant, I've got to kind of really look after it and water it, regularly, but not give it too much. So that it will grow a couple of sub-bass leaves down the bottom, because they're really going to help me with that review coverage. Now, the thing about these rubber figs is you have to be pretty careful in managing them if you're going to use them as a bass plant, because they can sometimes, and I don't know if you can see this here, this little leaf here, right? It's pretty small. So that's really you got to be careful, because that might cause the bass to bleed into the mid-range, and we don't want that. So I'm going to be cutting that leaf off. But yeah, let's talk about mid-range plants. Yeah, sorry, I'm just checking the frequency response of this plant, this one in particular, because this is a Fiddle Leaf Fig and they tend to vary, so you have to be careful which one you buy. And I don't even know if this particular kind of Fiddle Leaf Fig with these specifications is available outside of Europe. I'm not sure. But anyway, I use this for mid-range, basically for mid-range, but mainly for sort of 500 hertz and above. You can see that it's got enormous leaves, and this doesn't really kind of interfere with the sub-bass and the bass plant. In fact, there's a bit of a hole between the two, like this one doesn't go all the way down and cross over with that one, because crossing over plants is just, it's very, very difficult, because you really have to, get the right leaf sort of the lower mid-range and match it with the sort of the smaller leaves there. And that's hard because these leaves are thinner. So, but what I like about this plant is because especially it's really coming along up the top here. And what it does is I have this sat behind one of my speakers, and it sort of really pushes the mid-range into the room, but in a much more open way. So you can see just how easily this plant can move. That just shows you how sensitive it is to mid-range frequencies, although it does roll off at about, I think at about 3K, this particular one. I haven't measured it yet. I don't think there is a measurement system available yet to really truly assess how this plant and its sort of intrinsic biological properties translates over into what we hear. So you can get a basic idea from measurements of what this plant can do, but it doesn't show you the whole picture. Now we have to be very careful when treating the treble in our room, the uppermost frequencies, with a Parlour Palm like that which I have here. Now you can see the leaves are smaller, but they're more sort of filigreed. That's good for treble because these longer and more numerous and thinner leaves act as great dispersion tools as well, because you don't want your high frequency information sort of radiating uniformly around your room. You want to scatter it, which is why I have these on the walls. The great thing about this plant is we can vary how damp our treble is, basically made by this plant, by adjusting the amount of water we put into it, and so the moisture of the soil. So if the moisture level is higher, we get a more damped treble. But if the plant is drier, as it is kind of right now, and it's it ends up giving us a bit more of a livelier treble. If you overdo it in that direction, what I do is I drop a coffee cake from my espresso machine into the soil. That tends to draw out some of the water, so that you've got a more balanced sounding plant. The other thing we need to be very aware of is something called the photosynthesis, easy for you to say, photosynthesis bubble. All plants photosynthesize, but the uppermost frequencies are very sensitive to that photosynthesis. And if a plant is particularly active, it can create this sort of bubble here of photosynthesizing going on, and that can mess with the air behind the speaker, because this one's behind my speaker, and you don't want that at all. Not at all. Now what I do to counteract that negative effect is I have a yucca over there, which then draws some of the photosynthesis action in the room to over there as well, and I've got another plant over there. So I'm spreading out my photosynthesis action, so I eliminate the possibility of having a very intensely localized photosynthesis bubble behind my speaker messing with my treble. There are some people that say you cannot beat the sound of a cactus. I've not really found that to be true. I tend to like a mixture of plants, different plants. I mean, I'm not like singularly set on, a fern or, I guess I do lean towards the sort of the palm end of the plant spectrum, but I'm not set in my ways enough to say I'm just going to use cacti because cacti is what I've always used, it's what my dad used, and you just can't beat their sound. Nonsense. Many different plants have a very similar sound profile to the cacti, and some people I think have argued that what kind of plant was it? Was it a rubber plant? Maybe a rubber plant is closer to the original recording than a cacti can bring you. Again, I don't know, you have to listen for yourself. As always, I'm just here to not give advice, but to plant ideas, excuse the pun. You need to go and listen to the plants yourself to work out which one is best for you. But I will leave you with this thought, because just as it is true with loudspeakers, it's also true with plants. Position matters. And not just where you put the plant in the room, but its rotation. So you need to experiment with the rotation of the plant. I spent a good 3 days getting the rotation of that Parlour Palm correct, so that I got the right treble balance in my room. The yucca, not so fussy, but then again, I'm just using that, as you noticed, to correct for the photosynthesis bubble problem. Anyway, if you found this video at all useful, please hit the like button down below. If you like my attitude to high-end audio, in that it also includes the greenery in which we have around our house. I mean, everybody has plants, don't they? I think most people do. Then please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Now, obviously, I'm not being serious. This is an April Fool's joke. However, the bit about dispersion, higher frequency dispersion by plants, is actually true. If you load enough plants into your room, it does improve the sort of dispersion pattern of treble, but you need quite a lot. It's not a dramatic effect, really. It's very small. But some audiophiles swear by it, and yeah, fair enough. If you find what works for you, then fine. But yeah, I guess this is just a bit of fun, really. And remember, the people we should fear the most are those with no sense of humour.